right, y'all. So Eric Curry, founder of the Native Experience and event producer for the Mission Loteria, is going to be hosting this panel. And this panel is going to be on Bay Area landmarks. So I'll let Eric Curry introduce the panel and who each person is and what we're going to jump into. And thank you so much for being here once again. My name is Paloma Weverka and I'm with KQED.
Thank you. Thank you, Paloma. I actually thought that I would let the panelists introduce themselves in a moment. I just wanted to give you folks a little bit more context. So 3 years ago, I started putting together a scavenger hunt that, like I said earlier, was based on one that my father put together for me and my brothers. And I floated it to Luis, my boss at Mission Loteria, and it just wasn't the right time. It kind of fell flat. We had too many things going on. I tried again 2 years ago, and same thing kind of happened. Way too many things going on. And then I remember kind of peeking over the calendar and I was like, wait, it's San Francisco's 175th birthday. We know that really cool chick at KQED named Paloma. Maybe this could work. And as long story short, thank you all for being here tonight. It did work. And we just got confirmation that we're going to be back next year. So I hope you can all join us. We worked out a lot of tweaks, but I think overall, honestly, things went much better than expected for this being the first time. So thank you all. I'm going to hand over the mic to our first panelist and let her introduce herself. And the way that this is kind of going to work is I have two more specific questions for each of my panelists, two general ones that they're all going to answer, and then if we have time, we're going to open it up for questions from you all. So without further ado.
Thanks, Eric. Happy to be here. Thank you for the ice cream. My name is Lucia Gonzalez Ippolito. I am a artist. I'm a muralist. I'm a screen printer. I'm a teacher. I'm a mother. And I was born and raised in the Mission District. Grew up in Balmy Alley. And I'm the founder and director of Lover's Lane, which is a community event that I throw around Valentine's Day every year. And it's really fun. Is this gonna reach? Yep.
Oh,
okay.
yes.
Hi everyone, thank you very much, Eric. My name is Henry Weverka. I am Ruth Asawa's grandson and president of Ruth Asawa Lanier Incorporated. I pretty much work with our gallery and institutions around the world to plan exhibitions of my grandmother's work. And I'm San Francisco born and raised. Now her work gets all this notoriety, but as a kid I was always first and foremost most proud of Republic commissions around San Francisco, including one just on the other side of Ghirardelli Square, Andreas Fountain. So thank you very much for having me.
Hey folks, my name is Carlo Arteaga. I am the co-executive director of the Transgender District, the world's only transgender recognized historical placemaking place here in San Francisco, and very proud to be here. We'll talk more about what the Trans District is and where we're located. I'm originally from Chicago, but I would say that San Francisco is my adopted city after 20 plus years here. It's been an amazing place to be at different times, and I'm excited to share some of that history.
So like we all heard from the introductions, every person sitting next to me was carefully, specifically, and uniquely chosen to speak on a different dimension of a city that we all know you could spend 10 lifetimes and barely scratch the surface of what San Francisco has to offer. With that being said, my first question is for Lucia here. So I'll never forget meeting you for the first time in front of Mission Makeover, smack dab in the middle of Balmy Alley. I apologize, you probably heard me giving my spiels there way before we actually met face to face.
I did.
I think you said that too. But I can't believe that mural's gonna be 13 years old. Like, it blows my mind, and again, as you probably heard me say, that you literally just had so much foresight for where the mission was headed, where things were happening, literally what things were taking place. Can you give us a little bit of the backstory, the planning process that went behind Mission Makeover?
Sure. So like I said, I grew up in the Mission, and It was like watching this slow tidal wave, my parents came here in the 70s. My father is a muralist and cartoonist, artist. My mother was always kind of behind the scenes in activism, and I grew up being dragged to protests and dragged to art centers in the neighborhood and all over the city, and in the 90s with the .com and everything just kind of spiraling, witnessing my friends being forced out of their homes. Next door to my house, I grew up sharing a window in my garden with my neighbor she would pass me her plates of Salvadoran food, and I would give her either my mom's Italian or my dad's Mexican food, and it was always like family and balmy. And then to see that building transition to these $8,000 a month small apartments and kick out 10 families. It was, the inspiration behind Mission Makeover was just the witnessing of the changes in the mission, and the two doors, if you've seen that mural, is my perception of how the mission was and how the mission was becoming. And the upper portion is more a global look of oppression and how, in my eyes, that gentrification is really a form of neocolonialism, and it just, it's really impacted how I've grown up in the mission, and it was really a statement of being part of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I've been dying to ask you that, by the way. My next question is for Henry. So growing up in the Outer Mission, otherwise known as the Excelsior, one of my earliest memories of visiting downtown was seeing the San Francisco fountain made by your grandmother. And I'll never forget my mom stating very matter-of-factly, that was made by Ruth Asawa. And it was a name I never forgot. So this is kind of, again, making my wildest dreams come true to be sitting so close to her grandson. But you mentioned Andrea's fountain, everybody knows, and if you don't know, look up San Francisco fountain. Is there a piece of art that is perhaps not as widely known that holds a special place in your heart, and why?
Well, first of all, let me just say first that I also hold the San Francisco fountain in a special place in my heart. Because my grandmother enlisted the help of over 250 community members to make that fountain. So, including many school children in the neighborhood I grew up in Noe Valley at Alvarado Elementary School. The youngest contributor to that was 3 years old, and the oldest was 88, who was a dear friend of her, a photographer named Imogen Cunningham. But again, I do, like I said, growing up, despite, what she's best known for, her looped wire sculptures, her public commissions really hold a special place in my heart. And I think what's great about the notoriety she's gotten internationally is that her public artwork here in the San Francisco Bay Area has got more attention. So in the last couple of years, in 2018, they refurbished the Andreas Fountain here in Ghirardelli Square. In 2016, they refurbished the San Francisco Fountain downtown, which is probably her most notable. And now we are working on renovating her origami fountains in Japantown. And the city and state got $7 million in order to renovate the entire space and refurbish my grandmother's contributions to the space. So if I had to say, personally, the origami fountains in Japantown, if anybody hasn't been down there, I'd encourage you to see them. They're based on origami paper folds, as well as her studies with a mid-century artist named Joseph Albers at Black Mountain College. So that's probably one of my favorites.
Thank you. And actually, I haven't seen those yet, so I'm excited to go check them out. My next question is for Carlo here. So, when I first moved back to San Francisco 5 or 6 years ago, I had a random night out in the Tenderloin, and we were looking for pizza. And we stopped at a sign that said Compton's Cafeteria Riot. And pardon my ignorance, but immediately my head goes, oh, Compton, why is there a thing about Southern California in the middle of Tenderloin? Can you please educate us about why that riot that took place in August, they don't even know the date for sure, but so a lot of people say August 26, 1966, might I add, years before what took place at Stonewall, and why that was so pivotal and why that was so important.
Yes, cool, awesome. Well, before I go into that story, I want to make a connection because I think all our stories thread a similar line around resistance, around acknowledging populations and people who have been otherized in so many different ways. And just to say, probably your dad was part of the muralists who went to the south side of Chicago where I grew up, and I was born and raised in the 70s and 80s, to do murals alongside 16th Street, the rail station, or the railroad that was around that side. And it was one of the 3 different Mexican American neighborhoods in that city. And it was really impactful because it talked about the history of our empowerment. And so that's the connection I have with your folk. And then the cultural district is one of 10 cultural districts, including Japantown, which is the oldest cultural district in the city of San Francisco. And cultural districts are a way in which the city can preserve the historical legacy, placemaking of folks that would otherwise be invisibilized and erased, and have been throughout different cities and towns across the US. And so I think that's what makes San Francisco very unique, is that it does have a placemaking, historical conservation, dedication to different neighborhoods and lifting and preserving that history. And that's so very important for us to know, because I, as a young person, I didn't know the histories of my colleagues, other folks of color in this country, Filipino, African American, Black, liberation fighters, Japanese folks that were fighting the internment camps in the 40s, and so and fought for reparations, which they won. And so all these different cultural districts really bring a history that I think ties us all around resistance, around how do we preserve and make sure our history is not erased. We see this across our country. They're pitting transgender folks against you and I when we, and like you, have material conditions that we want improved. Right? And so part of the history of the Compton cafeteria riots is a history of resistance. Compton Cafeterias was a coffee shop, a cafeteria that was open late nights on the corner of Turk and Taylor here in San Francisco. And for many years, it was the haven of the swing shift folks getting off of that third shift, afternoon shift, or folks going in before maybe their night shift. But also it was a place for a lot of transgender women, a lot of drag queens, a lot of queer folk, a lot of queer youth that maybe didn't have a place to stay to go have a nice cup of coffee or to converse or to convene with their people. And oftentimes, like we see when any congregation of folks gets together that are otherized, they get harassed. And during that time, the LGBT community was incredibly harassed by the police, not just here in San Francisco, but throughout the US. If you wore things that weren't congruous to what they saw as being a gender affirming, or in that sense, a gender conforming way of being, then you were at threat to being arrested, to being detained. And oftentimes these raids came unannounced. And so at the Compton cafeterias, it was a transgender woman that said, you know what, ya basta, it's enough. I'm not gonna take this harassment anymore. And she threw a cup of coffee at police that were called in to, again, harass the patrons, kick people out of the restaurant. And it was in this moment that in 1966, a very cool night in San Francisco, I can't say hot because you know how it is in San Francisco. In August of 66, folks lifted up and rioted. And what happened then afterwards, it was a formation of a group called the Vanguard. And it was the first youth-driven liberation movement for LGBTQI folks before Stonewall. And every single city has a transgender history. And so our job, even though we're the only one in the world here, our job is to make sure that not just San Francisco celebrates and uplifts history that goes back to the 1920s, but even so for us, I think as indigenous people, it goes back even further throughout millennia. And so it's been the operative to erase this history, but we know the power of history, the power of acknowledging history, of writing history, of sharing oral tradition has been for millennia for our people. And so we must continue to do this, because the reality is that right now they're using us as a wedge issue to separate you and I from the reality is that our material conditions are all the same. We're all paying the same rent. We all can't afford the gas because the gas is super expensive. Rents are super expensive. And so we all share a very common theme around survival. And so we want to make sure that our history is not erased, that our history continues to be told. And that's what the Compton Cafeteria Riots were about here.
Thank you so much for sharing. Might I add that it was actually in the deep dives that I went in planning this scavenger hunt that I learned that it was actually oftentimes the employees of Compton's that would call the police on their own patrons.
Yep.
So you're running a business or a hobby, but anyway, my next question is for Lucia. So one of my favorite events, I literally did not come up here without my Lover's Lane bag, took it to Colombia, took it to El Salvador, and always with me. I love Lover's Lane, and next year's gonna be the 5th year anniversary. It's actually going to be on Valentine's Day for the 5th year. It's one of those things I've started planning year-round for, as we have with Mission Loteria. Tell us a little bit about how that grew, what that becomes in the face of commercialism with Valentine's Day. Please, Lucia.
Thank you. I always grew up around a lot of block parties, a lot of festivals. Balmy Alley had the Dia de los Muertos procession pass through. I grew up going to Carnival every year. I've organized a few times a 415 day, right now, today. And I think I'm very inspired not only by the act of celebrating, but also the 3 R's, right? The resilience, restitution, and resistance, which I think we try to implement within Lover's Lane as well. It's not about Valentine's Day as a commercial holiday. It's about love as an act of resistance. And we really try to uplift our small business and our upcoming vendors and local artists who are really just trying to survive in this city, like, Carlo was talking about. And these local community events are so important to keeping our neighborhood thriving. If you walk down 24th Street, you see a lot of vacant buildings, a lot of empty old businesses that can no longer afford it. And a lot of people trying to survive are resorting to vending on the street. And the city, as we witnessed with, if everybody remembers the fence blocking off the BART Plaza, the city is really attacking our street vendors. And people are just trying to afford to pay for their families and their children. And so Lover's Lane is really about bringing families and community together. And we want to keep working with all of you folks to just keep coming together to support each other and celebrate in this way. And so, Lover's Lane it's about love. It's about love for the mission. It's about love for the arts, love for our youth, love for our small business.
Thank you. Did you hear that, folks? You got 10 months to plan. Put it in your calendars right now, because nobody needs a 4th yacht, but, families need ballet lessons, baseball lessons, the schools, etc. Okay, my next question is for Henry. So I was trying to do the deepest of deep dives, into your grandmother, more so than the fan that I've been my whole life. I didn't get a chance to go to the exhibit. Those tickets went by so quickly. But September 2nd, folks, that's how long we have to check out Ruth Asawa's retrospective exhibit. So I definitely plan on being in line next month. But something that just blew my mind, and mind you, just 6 decades of work, and she's known best for the looped wire, but drawings and sketches and it's just this huge catalog. The thing going on in the back of my mind was like, how on earth did she raise 6 kids? 6 kids, while doing all of this? So can you tell us a little bit about your grandmother, Ruth, as a mother, as a matriarch, as a grandmother, perhaps, the side that you saw that none of us got to see?
So my grandmother came to San Francisco in 1949 from Black Mountain College, and she was one of 7 children herself. And very early on, she knew she wanted to have 6 kids of her own. So much so that when she became pregnant with my eldest aunt Aiko, she adopted my uncle Xavier. And in what was the most prolific decade of her career, in terms of her artistic outlook, she also raised 6 children in their home in San Francisco. So, also at a time when, again, the most notable artists were Jackson Pollock and people who had dedicated studios. She chose to keep her studio in her home so that her children and grandchildren eventually could appreciate the arts. And then again, by the time her children were out of the house, she was completely dedicated her life to arts education. She was an advocate for the arts. She was on the California Arts Council, the National Endowment of the Arts. She also started the Alvarado School Arts Workshop in 1968, as well as the San Francisco School of the Arts, which was then renamed the Ruth Asawa San Francisco School of the Arts in her honor in 1982. So, for me, as growing up as her grandson, I didn't really realize the gravity of who she was as a person, as an artist, until I started working very, very closely to plan exhibition 6 years ago. Right. The sculptures that I saw in her home, the origami, the wire Christmas tree that was suspended from the ceiling on Christmas was it was normal to me. That was just my crazy grandma. And now I'm just so happy to be able to share her with the world. But I say time and time again, I think her impact is not only on because of her sculptures that are hanging in galleries and museums around the world. I think it's in the hearts and minds of San Franciscans. And I can't tell you how many times I've been approached by people who share stories of their interactions with my grandmother. I was at a bachelor party a couple months ago, and I didn't know anybody, and 6 of the 10 of us had our faces cast by my grandmother in San Francisco public schools in the 1990s. So
oh, wow.
There's 2 degrees of separation. She was a tremendous woman, and to plan this exhibition of this scale that will travel to the New York MoMA, go on to Spain and Switzerland, walking through the galleries, I'm just really, really taken aback by overhearing these conversations of people, who say, wow, what an amazing artist, but what a better woman, So I'm just proud to be her grandson. It was a strange upbringing. I went to art camp with her. I'm by far the least artistically gifted person in my family, which isn't saying much, but I'm just really proud and happy to support Ruth Asawa, who very much considers herself a San Franciscan. And the other thing that I just wanted to say is that, when she started exhibiting in New York in the 1950s, and then withdrew to really focus on the city of San Francisco, her critics asked her, why don't you exhibit in Chicago? Why don't you go to New York? Why aren't you trying to get in museums of Europe? And she said, I want my impact to be on my hometown of San Francisco. And it makes me so proud that you can see, her influence all over the city, and again, in the hearts and minds of so many San Franciscans.
Thank you for that perspective that we would have never seen, we would have never gotten. My next question is for Carlo. So, every single American movement for LGBTQ rights has been led by trans women of color.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that again. Every single American movement for LGBTQ rights has been led by transgender women of color. What can we do as San Franciscans, as Americans, to support the transgender community today?
Gosh. Yeah. Well, it's a lot. One, I would start with helping fund the organizations. I know a lot of the LGBTQ organizations here in the city are going through a funding crisis, a lot having to do with budget cuts that are happening. But also just to know that philanthropic dollars, less than 5% go to LGBTQ organizations nationwide, and about less than 2% go to trans-led organizations. So I'd say even though we started the movement, we're far behind in terms of being funded and doing the work that's important to both preserve the history, but also inform the now movement towards liberation. So part of what you can do is, one, amplify, come to the Transgender District, visit the Transgender District. We're going to be displaying our new banners and flags in the district. The district spans from Ellis Street all the way down to 2 blocks south on 6th Street and on Market, as east as Powell Street and west on Turk and Jones. And we're full of history, going back, like I said, into the 1920s. So I think there's a couple of things that you can do is making sure that in your workplaces that you have welcoming environments. 1 in 3 trans individuals faces workplace discrimination or has been fired from a job because of their identity as transgender folks. And 1 in 3 folks have been unhoused at one point in their lives. So it's incredibly important for our community to support these groups that continue to provide not just frontline important services, organizing, housing, but also lifting up our culture. Join our events in August. We have Transgender History Month. We're the only city and the only state in the world that recognizes transgender history, and we need to lift up that history and continue to make sure that our places of employment, our places of housing are open to our people, because when we're lifted, everyone's lifted, right? And so we need to remind ourselves that our history are also very much tied, and so tactics that they're using against the transgender community, they will use against immigrant communities, they will use against even US citizens. So we are all in this movement together, and I just remind you to continue to support both as a volunteer, in your dollars, but also in the time to talk to your friends and family about why it's important to lift up the issues that we see today around our material conditions, and not just get distracted by the wedge issue that they're trying to create and the scapegoating they're trying to create in our communities.
Thank you, Carlo.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that my Castro LGBTQ tour, as well as my children's book, Emilio's First Pride, are both dedicated to the memory of Ivory Nicole Smith, who was a former program associate and at the Transgender
Thank
District.
you.
Absolutely,
I didn't know that.
Absolutely, had to share that.
Oh, wow.
We're going to shift gears a little bit. Like I said, I have a couple more general questions for my panelists, but one of my favorite ways of describing San Francisco is as a city filled with lots of smaller cities. Every street has its own energy, and it's not hard to walk through 4 different neighborhoods if you stop paying attention, right? If you don't mind the hills as much. Where is a part of the city, is there a part of the city that you have a particular fondness for? I'm just gonna say there's a reason the hunt began at Dolores Park.
I mean, of course I have to say Balmy Alley because I grew up there, but also because, you know, the history is so rich. I mean, these murals were started in the 70s, and some of them are still there. They're reflecting of U.S. involvement in Central America, and these artists attempt to protest these wars and involvement, and you know, it kind of was inspiration for all these other mural alleys, like we see, like Clarion Alley and Lilac Alley and many other murals that are around the city and the neighborhood. So of course I have to say that, but but you know, I always got to go to my views too, and take my daughter up Bernal, and so yeah.
Piggyback on that one. Well, you know, again, Noe Valley to me has always been home. My grandparents have been there since 1960. They were on Twin Peaks for a couple years before that, but one of the reasons is because, again, my grandmother had 6 children. All 6 of them settled in the same neighborhood. Wow. Oh, wow. So I've got 33 family members running around Noe Valley. So it was hard to get in trouble in high school, or rather easy to get in trouble in high school, but yeah, so, you know, Noe Valley will always be home, and again, I have to throw out my view, which is Kite Hill. Because I think it's the best view of the city.
Okay.
Yay. I have a question. You went to Alvarado? Was Mr. Muniz your principal?
I went to Rooftop.
Oh, Rooftop, okay.
That's a rooftop.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. My favorite views, I would concur with the panelists. I would say definitely Bernal Heights is. I like views, and I like sweetheart views. You know what I'm saying? That you take it in. So definitely Bernal Heights. There's a really cool park up here off of, I think it's Taylor. It's called Coolberth Park, I think it is.
Ina Coolberth.
Yeah, that has another amazing view of the city. So if y'all want to take a date up there, have a lunch by yourself even, meditate, beautiful places. And I would say one thing about Bernal as well, like many of us, it's not safe sometimes, unfortunately. to go to different sites in the city. So look out for each other. We had a young person that lost his life, unfortunately, up there due to police violence, Alex Nieto. And so we just want to make sure that, you know, it's safe for you all, but it's also safe for the people who are from here to be able to go and enjoy these sites. You know, the middle class and working class of San Francisco has been decimated. We see very, very little folks anymore. And that's part of the richness of what made the city so great. And so I'd love to see more of our people continue to return if possible and make that a priority to make sure affordable housing. So making sure that folks, like if you live in the city, we got to make sure that everyone is allowed to stay and to have that history, especially folks who were born and raised here, because it's heartbreaking to hear people, you know, 45 minutes away, an hour away, can't even come back to their hometown. So I would say that.
That part.
Like the last black man said in San Francisco, you can't hate it if you don't love it, right?
That part. Let me throw out there actually. So a couple weeks ago, as preparation for this hunt and a big social media blitz that we did, I hiked to the top of all 7 of San Francisco's original hills in one day.
Wow, one day?
So yeah, Nob Hill, Russian Hill, Telegraph Hill, Rincon Hill, Mount Davidson, Mount Sutro, and Twin Peaks. And there's actually 3 peaks up there, by the way, but anyway. There was a lot of fog, so maybe I didn't give Twin Peaks a fair shot, but in my opinion, the prettiest view was actually from Telegraph Hill. And the prettiest hike, my opinion, was Mount Davidson.
Interesting.
That, yeah, very Alice in Wonderland. Anyway.
Were you on mushrooms?
No, God, no. My God, with my mom here. So, yeah, you know, yeah, you're right. I did ask, yeah, I set it up. San Francisco, right? So another way that I love to describe San Francisco, and it's very, very much on theme and on par with everything we've been discussing, but is as the birthplace of movements that have spread across the entire country and quite literally changed the course of history. So from the 49ers to the beatniks to the hippies, right, on up to the techies and into the AI boom. We've always been the trendsetters here in San Francisco, and that's something we have to be proud of. It's an obligation, right, but it's also with that obligation or with that responsibility comes a great deal of, you know what I'm trying to say, responsibility. Anyway, so in that theme of trendsetters, what is something that you are looking forward to in the next 25, 30, 40 years?
That's a loaded question. Geez. I mean, I guess, yeah, in 25, I'm looking forward to the revolution. I mean, like, when's it coming? You know, I think there's a lot of grief and despair and a lot of feelings of numbness right now, but you know, I'm really inspired by all the action happening around Palestine. I'm really inspired by the action around, like, you know, fighting back against all these defunding of our programs, by transgender women, you know, and the actions around supporting our transgender community, around and around fighting ICE and supporting our migrant community. I think that those are things that when we dedicate our focus and uplift the ones that are actually trying to hold it down and fight, that is something to look forward to. I think that things are really scary, and it's hard to see the light. You know, I don't know if I want to live in the United States much longer. But when I'm feeling that way, and I look at my community and I gather with my neighbors and my friends and community organizers around Lover's Lane, for example, I feel this sense of love and unity, and it makes me like, okay, this is why I'm here, and this is what I look forward to for my children. I'm looking forward to my children growing up and learning how to be revolutionaries, and teaching our kids about what it means to fight back and stand up for people who sometimes can't speak for themselves. And so, yeah, I think that's something to look forward to.
So one of the reasons that my grandparents actually ended up in San Francisco in 1949 was because California was one of the only 3 states in the country at that time that allowed interracial marriage.
Yeah.
My grandfather was Caucasian from from just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. My grandmother was Japanese American from Southern California. The other reason was that my grandfather heard from a friend that they could get a 5-course meal and a bottle of wine for 75 cents. And the other thing that really attracted them to San Francisco, a long time ago, this is the 40s, which has certainly changed now. But the other reason was because San Francisco was like a haven for creatives and artists. And through my working on this retrospective at SF MoMA, I've had the opportunity to meet so many creative people. And with so many different talents, art installers, t-shirt printers, poster printers, merchandisers, emerging artists. And, something that I'm really committed to here in San Francisco over the next 25 to 30 years is really, dedicating myself and putting my effort towards, bringing San Francisco back in a sense that, it's a haven for creatives, for collaboration. And I think really, I believe in what my grandmother thought that, getting children to make something with their hands is critically important. So in the era of social media where everything's online, I firmly believe that teaching, children to make arts and create their own histories for themselves is critically important. And I just can't wait to support that moving forward.
I think art is healing. I mean, I think one of the things that we try to lift up at the Trans District is that we're exceptional. We have amazing artists. And so if you could do anything, I think in the month of August, if you can attend some of our events, there's also let me go back. There's a Compton Cafeteria's play that's an immersive play that's happening. You should check out the Tenderloin Museum, one of our partners. They're an amazing place of history, both jazz, LGBT history, history of architecture in the city of San Francisco. It's an important history to really immerse yourself into. So try to get those tickets for the Compton Cafeteria's play, immersive play if you can. It's running through, I believe, through May. And if you can't make it, then the Commonwealth Club is hosting a Transgender History District conversation on the 25th. And I would invite you all to go to the Commonwealth Club and join some of our historians, Susan Stryker, Dr. Megan Rohrer, and Donna Persona, who actually went to the Compton Cafeterias as a young person. And she wrote the play to this immersive play that folks are able to experience what it was like to be in that evening, night, rebel-rousing riot, resisting some of the treatment that folks were facing. And I just want to say, it's all tied together. I was just in Houston, and I was looking at the light fixtures at the hotel at the West End Galleria in Houston. I'm like, oh my God, this looks like so much like Ruth's work. And so it's all tied together. Art is resistance, and so if there's a way that you can continue to support the work in Balmy Alley, that again is such a rich culture and history. It's the tapestry of San Francisco, and that's the unique part of our city. I think while we see tourism go down in many parts of the U.S., I think San Francisco can continue to see heightened tourism because we are a history of resistance. And so I look forward to also next year we're going to be launching our Mardi Gras and our second line in the Tenderloin District. And so we'll be celebrating this month in May the Tenderloin Arts and Music Festival, which will be introducing this Mardi Gras idea. And so definitely call you all to support Balmy Alley. They have amazing, I've been to your events on the alley. I bought my little Muni chain. And so, so there's so many vendors that you wouldn't even think of have such amazing talents that you can really invest some time in discovering and really investing in their art and culture. So I really encourage everyone to explore every nook and cranny of the city. You're so very lucky to be in a city that has such a great, great, deep history.
Again, everyone that's sitting up here with me was chosen specifically and uniquely, and just my wildest dreams have been surpassed with the things that have been brought up and the common themes and everything that we've been talking about. Part of another rabbit hole that I went down was I was looking through some old pictures, and the seas of color that you see in like my kindergarten class and my first grade class at West Portal Elementary, because San Francisco used to be hella diverse. Yeah. And actually, I want to also just piggyback off the comment you made, Henry. I don't think Loving versus Virginia was passed until 1968, which made interracial marriage legal federally. I think over half of this panel, if not half this panel, is mixed, right? Mm-hmm. So again, that is absolutely worth mentioning. And I think at the time that your grandmother got married, it was like Washington State, California, and a third, and that's it. Yeah. I don't think we take that into consideration.
Yeah.
At this point, we have a couple minutes to take some questions from the audience. If anyone has a question. No? Yeah. What should I handle?
One of the things that I loved, both about, all of you represented parts of I mean, really, I think every spot on the scavenger hunt was definitely sort of an off the beaten track destination, and a part of, I think the part of the history that like a lot of locals really appreciate and know about. It also, I think, can be really fun to sometimes rediscover the things that make a place. Sort of, we're here in Ghirardelli Square and Fisherman's Wharf and the Golden Gate Bridge that maybe are the more big ticket tourist destinations. So for you all having deep roots here in San Francisco, what are some of the maybe more famous things that you really like showing people? And you say, no, this is really like, this one is worth it to see.
Let me answer that one first. Next month is actually my 4th year in business, owning a walking tour company. But well before I did that, when I used to come and show people my city from college, I used to love showing people San Francisco in a day, like in a car. Like for whatever reason, that was like my thing. And I was like, watch, we can do it. We'll have time left over. We can make all these stops. But it's like, it's that kind of city that you can totally see in under a day.
Yeah. Or more than that.
Yeah.
The San Francisco Arts Commission is currently working on this big project called Shaping Legacy, where they're talking about reimagining monuments and memorials, and one of those big discussions is like all these statues memorializing these colonists, or it's a nicer colonizer, and taking them down, and what does that mean, replacing them with what? And so I'm really excited about the future of this project, because we're talking to youth about what do they want to see, and I think to answer your question, when my family from Mexico or my mom's in West Side Chicago, come to San Francisco, I'm like, yeah, we can go to Fisherman's Wharf. Well, the funnest thing I saw there was a shark attacking one of the seals the other day, which was crazy. But I'm like, no, let me show you these old murals, and let's talk about like why that was made, what the story behind it, who the artist was, and then we can stop by this burrito spot, because I know you can't get no burritos like that in Chicago or Mexico. No, you can't. Even though, it's Chicano, but you can't get them anywhere else like that. So, that to me is the most best tourist attraction.
Well, I'm contractually obligated to say all of Ruth Asawa's public commission. But for me, I'm a big sucker for Baker Beach. I love watching the sunset over the Golden Gate Bridge. I think one thing that makes San Francisco so unique for me growing up is that, the Marin headlands are so accessible. So, I mean, in addition, again, I love to take people around San Francisco. I feel like we should compare notes.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good math going on, but I'm sure yours is better now. But I think that's one of the best beaches in the world, and I'm just a sucker for Baker Beach.
I have a few. I would say Land's End. There's a really cool what's it called? Labyrinth. So if you've ever been to Land's End, I would say go walk that labyrinth. I say SF MoMA is one of our biggest treasures in the city, both housing your grandma stuff, but also has the first collection of trans artists. Marcel Prado, who's a photographer, a professor, artist from Colombia, trans immigrant, took the first picture that is a permanent collection, part of the SF MoMA. I would say that, and then kind of a hidden spot, I would say Tommy's on the west side. If you've ever been to Tommy's, if you haven't, it's a Mexican joint. They have the best tequila. I hope it's still around.
Are they still open? I remember that place.
Yeah, so it's really, Cochinita Pibil is their signature. So if you ever go to the west side and the avenues, Tommy's joint, you gotta go check it out.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Can we please get a round of applause for this incredible panel? Thank you again, everyone, for each of your individual contributions. You provided a piece and an aspect to this night that I could not have, that no one could have, that we all really put together. Speaking of the amazing, incredible collaborative effort that this was, I do have to make some thank yous. So first off, I want to just thank my amazing Mission Loteria team. Luis, our campaign manager, mostly for putting up with me, but listen, I can run my mouth, I can do the history, but I can't do the graphics, I can't do any of the tech stuff, like that's all you, like Gen Z without even being Gen Z. And it's a huge compliment, right? Fiorella, for just being the hustle with me, the back-breaking work that it took, waking up in the mornings to meet up at Dolores Park. We had some great conversations, right? We really did. I also want to thank Duck Fat Productions, Enrique and crew handling the videography and the audio. Thank you so much. I want to thank our gracious Ghirardelli hosts for just providing this amazing venue for us. And also, again, suggesting that we include Andreas Fountain. I want to thank our amazing partners at KQED, who really took this vision that started out as a little 9 or 10-year-old boy in the Excelsior and just amplified it way past my wildest dreams. So thank you so much, Paloma. Thank you, Yoann. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Nicole. I'm so sorry if I'm forgetting anyone, but the Arthur guys, right? The Arthur company, that's who we got to work with. That's who we got to partner with, and next year's gonna be just that much better and amazing. Last but certainly not least, I have to thank my ancestors. I have to thank my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Agostino Cuneo, and his wife, Agnes, who moved here to San Francisco from Genoa, Italy in 1865. I also have to thank my abuelita Dorita and abuelito Gilberto, who escaped a brutal civil war in El Salvador to give me the life that I now have, that I can now enjoy. So thank you, San Francisco. Happy birthday, San Francisco, and thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your evening.